HUNK's past is once so clouded in mystery, we know next to nothing about his past, even with his real name being unknown. The earliest record we have of HUNK was during his training at the Rockford Island facility in 1996, and over the next 2 years, HUNK would go on a large amount of missions, with many of them leaving himself the only survivor. This pattern would make him infamous among the other Umbrella Security Service agents, earning him the nickname Mr. Death. In fact, his survival rate for operations was rivaled only by one other operative, Sergeant Nikolai Genofev of the UBCS. During these 2 years, HUNK would also train another USS operative named Vector, training him in martial arts, with Vector's skill in the area eventually coming to rival his own. The next known incident was on September 15, 1998, where HUNK would take command of a team to bring in Dr. William Birkin, as well as his G-Virus, as the company had gained proof that the doctor was in contact with the US military. While his orders were to bring in the doctor alive, William would pull a gun on the team, resulting in him being gunned down by one of HUNK's men. The team would then take the virus samples and prepare to leave, but William had survived and injected himself with the virus sample he had kept on himself, and would immediately mutate, killing HUNK's team once again, leaving HUNK the sole survivor. He would then fight his way through the infected Raccoon City sewers and police station, eventually getting extracted on September 30th, thanks to a pilot who had wanted to meet him due to his reputation. After returning to Umbrella with the sample, HUNK would be briefly assigned to Rockford Island, but he would either be reassigned before or escape its infection. After this, we know absolutely nothing up until the fall of Umbrella, where in the following years, HUNK would become a legendary mercenary. Jack Krauser was born in the year 1976. His early life is mostly unknown until his adult life, when he would become a soldier in the US military, eventually joining Special Forces. In 2002, he would be partnered up with Leon Kennedy to take out the former Umbrella researcher Javier Hidalgo, who now worked as the drug lord selling bioorganic weapons. And after infiltrating a village overrun with zombies, Krauser would have Leon tell him about both the Raccoon City and Rockford Island incidents, becoming more and more intrigued with BOWs the more he faced them. Along the way, he would meet Javier's daughter, Manuela, who would guide them to her father, who would merge with a plant infected by the T. Veronica virus, and they would kill him, but in the process, Krauser's arm would be permanently injured. By the end of this mission, Krauser would have grown to admire the power of BOWs, and after being discharged due to his injuries, would fake his death and seek out Albert Wesker, who would repair his arm. Now loyal to Wesker, Jack would infiltrate the cult Los Illuminados, and would eventually be gifted a Plagas parasite, making him superhuman. He would then kidnap the US president's daughter, Ashley Graham. However, even after all of this, he still wasn't able to gain their trust and would be forced to call in Ada Wong, a mercenary working for the same company as Wesker. It would be shortly after this that he would again encounter Leon, who had been sent to rescue Ashley, almost kill him, only for Ada to intervene. A few hours later, Krauser would then battle Leon yet again, this time unleashing the Plagas in his body, but he would still be defeated. Krauser would survive this fight and blamed his failure on Ada, and knowing she would ultimately betray Wesker, would confront her in the battle to the death, resulting in Krauser finally dying at her hands. Even in death, however, he would be able to aid Wesker, as the Plagas sample extracted from his body would give Wesker everything he needed for his plans to finally come to fruition. Hello and welcome everyone to another bonus match where I'll be putting HUNK and Jack Krauser from the Resident Evil franchise against one another to see which soldier for hire would come out the victor if these two ever went head to head. Now, for these two, considering they've had no new appearances since I last used them, their information and footage will be coming right from HUNK's fight against Nikolai and Krauser's fight against Captain America, respectively. And aside from that, I have nothing to go over, so let's start, as always, by comparing these two physically. During the events of Resident Evil 2, HUNK is a human male and would likely be somewhere in his mid to late 30s. Now, while there's no official statement on his height, by comparing his in-game model to that of Leon, who is 5 feet 11 inches tall, we can see that he's about an inch or two shorter, putting him at roughly 5 feet 9 inches and likely weighing around 190 pounds. As a soldier, HUNK has conditioned himself to be in excellent physical condition, being able to perform various combat and operation scenarios. His best showing of physical strength is his ability to effortlessly snap the neck of a human. Now, without getting too far into the details, the way HUNK does this is probably the most difficult and impractical way to snap someone's neck there is, with the correct way to do so already needing a damn good amount of strength. On top of that, it's actually far less likely that doing this will actually result in a kill. So the fact that HUNK can easily do so and reliably kill his opponent with this method implies a near superhuman amount of strength. Now, he has no notable feats or really anything to suggest that his speed would be anything out of the ordinary, but at the same time, due to him being a trained soldier with years of experience in special operations under his belt, along with how he's developed his strength, would convince me that to put him well above an average man when it comes to this area. His stamina would need to be high as well, as he single-handedly fought off infected for 2 2 weeks with no backup until his extraction on September 30th. I'd put his durabilities at similar levels to his strength, thanks to him being able to survive a hit with a metal pipe by G1 Birkin. By this point in his mutation, Birkin had already achieved the strength necessary to kill a man in only a few blows, and considering his G2 form had enough strength to one-shot a Tyrant, it's not too much of a stretch to think that the G1 could go head-to-head with one. At the time of his death, Jack was a 28-year-old man standing at 6 feet 1 inch and weighing 207 pounds with a muscular build. Thanks to being injected with a Plagas parasite, he has surpassed peak physical fitness, becoming a superhuman. While not having that many strength feats, we can directly compare him to characters like Chris Redfield and Leon Kennedy, who have reached peak physical condition, and as the Plagas parasite has enhanced his abilities, he should be able to surpass these characters. In terms of physicality, he could effortlessly leap dozens of feet into the air, could send Leon flying with his blade strikes, and has overpowered Leon, who is in peak physical condition, more than once. And keep in mind, humans in Resident Evil also seem to be much stronger than real-life humans, as characters like Leon, Chris, and Jill are capable of overpowering BOWs, some of which are bigger than themselves. Chris, for example, has been shown to be able to push a boulder that has been calculated to weigh around 300,000 pounds. Even if you wanted to say Chris only moved 10% of the weight due to the slope it was on, he still pushed with 30,000 pounds of force. And again, Jack should be much stronger than a peak physical human, as shown when he was able to overpower Leon in Resident Evil 4. Just like his strength, Jack's speed has been similarly enhanced, being able to keep up with Leon, who can throw his knife faster than humans can react, and keep up with BOWs. He can also avoid point-blank gunfire and can move dozens of feet in less than a second with his blade. While we don't have much on his stamina, we can assume it was similarly enhanced due to superhuman levels. His durability was boosted to the point of being able to tank heavy gunfire with little damage, survived having his chest blown out by Leon, and got back up to fight with Ada before finally being put down.
This category is very simple. While no doubt in good shape and possibly even being in peak physical condition with his appearances in the Mercenaries and Raid modes, putting Hunk on par with characters like Leon and Chris, Krauser sought out Wesker and injected himself with Las Plagas specifically to surpass these levels of physicality. In fact, going off of his physical build as well as his ability to keep up with Leon in Darkside Chronicles alone, I'd say that Krauser during Operation Javier was already above Resident Evil 4 Leon and would even pose a challenge to Resident Evil 5 Chris in terms of physical abilities. And his enhancements only made him stronger. There really isn't much to say here. Krauser easily gets the edge for physical abilities.
Hunk will be bringing 3 primary weapons into this engagement, all from his appearance in the Resident Evil 2 remake. His primary weapon will be an MP5 machine gun, which fires 9mm bullets, has a clip size of 32 bullets, has a fire rate of roughly 800 rounds a minute, and has an effective firing range of 650 feet. His sidearm will be his USP-9 handgun. This weapon fires 9mm bullets, has a modified clip size of 16 bullets, and has an effective firing range of 160 feet. His final weapon will be a standard issue US military combat knife measuring about 8 inches in total length. I will also be granting him his hidden blades, which he has hidden in his boots and along his forearms, 3 flashbangs, and finally a cloaking device which he used in the Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City online mode. This cloak lasts roughly 30 seconds, however it will disappear on its own if he fires a weapon or comes into physical contact with anyone. It needs about 2 minutes to recharge before it can be used again. His protective gear has thankfully remained fairly consistent throughout all his appearances, sporting a helmet, gas mask, tactical vest, and finally elbow knee pads. Jack's primary weapon will be his custom compact bow and arrow. Modern bows have an effective firing range of around 90 to 80 feet, and Jack carries 2 types of arrows with him, the first being standard and the second being explosive arrows. He also carries a B&T MP9 machine pistol. This weapon fires 9mm bullets with a magazine size of 25 bullets. Its standard fire rate is 900 RPM, and has a muzzle velocity of around 1300 feet a second and an effective firing range of 328 feet. He also has a small collection of flashbang and explosive grenades that he can be used to blind his opponent to make distance or go in for a quick kill, or simply blow them up at close ranges. He carries a combat knife that is around a foot in total length and is more than capable of piercing combat armor. While not a conventional weapon, he has the power to transform his arm into a multi-purpose blade, which can either be used to slash apart his opponents with blinding speed, or can spread out as a shield capable of blocking bullets and high-powered weaponry.
Both Hunk and Krauser use a limited but effective set of weapons that work well for their own combat style, but even in that context, it's clear to me that Krauser's gear is superior. For primary weapons, the MP5 is honestly a much better weapon. While Krauser's special explosive arrows would pack overall a much bigger punch, in doing so, he's sacrificing range, rate of fire, as well as standard damage, on top of using an inferior aiming method. Between their pistols, Krauser's has all the advantages. with a larger magazine, rate of fire, and effective range, and as a result, blows hunks out of the water considering that they use the same ammunition type. While both of these two will be bringing a knife to this fight, Krauser's is longer and has been shown to go through combat armor, which, if you ask me, makes up for Hunk's arm and foot blades. And speaking of armor, Hunk is the only one to be bringing protection into this fight, with his helmet and vest granting protection to his vital areas, likely negating Krauser's standard arrows and greatly dampening his MPU-9 shots. Then there's their special equipment, which honestly isn't very comparable. Krauser's blade is a tool for a frontal assault, meanwhile Hunk's cloak is for stealth, meaning that they wouldn't be used against each other conventionally, and depending on which is used first, the other could be ineffective counters for the other. However, Krauser's blade arm is more versatile, capable of both offense and defense, so I'd put it over the cloak just slightly. Overall, while Hunk has a better primary weapon, that's really it. Even his armor doesn't stand up against the protection provided by Krauser's arm blade. So really, it's no contest, and Krauser easily gets the edge for weapons and equipment.
Hunk's approach to combat and missions in general was to be quick and efficient. He's cold, ruthless, and willing to eliminate anyone between him and his goal. While there's no concrete evidence of his tactics in combat from his equipment and mission history, we can make a few assumptions. His gear seems to suggest he prefers engagements from a mid to close range, cloak and flashbang, suggesting that fighting would be a last resort in favor of escaping his enemy's pursuit. His only known mission was that of the arrest of William Birkin, which was meant to be a quick in-and-out extraction with minimal casualties. All this combined suggests to me that Hunk specialized in stealth operations where combat was seen as a last resort, such as extraction or assassination scenarios. Just to clarify, that is not to say that he would be bad in a direct combat scenario, as surviving 2 weeks in an ongoing T-virus outbreak proves that he is more than capable in these situations. While we don't get many first-hand examples of Hunk's hand-to-hand capabilities or even what martial arts he uses, there are a few second-hand examples that we can use to get an idea of his skill level. First up, we know that after the use of bioweapons became common practice among terrorist organizations, Hunk developed his own unique fighting style known as Close Quarters Quarantine Battle Zone, which was made to quickly and efficiently kill BOWs that could rip a person apart. The other is that he played a large role in training fellow USS member Vector, who was easily capable of killing trained UBCS mercenaries and fought evenly with United States Special Forces members. As a former soldier in the US military, it can be assumed that Jack has received standard military combat training, which would give him knowledge in Taekwondo, a mostly kick-based fighting style, as well as teaching many mobile attacks. Muay Thai, a fighting style similar to kickboxing, but teaches the use of elbow and knee blows rather than just the hands and feet. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which teaches grapples and holds to force an opponent to submit. As a member of Special Forces, Jack would have also been trained to deal with a variety of combat scenarios, from firefights to stealth operations, which he seemed to show a preference towards ambushing Leon multiple times and setting traps for him to fall into. That being said, he has also shown the ability to engage in opponents head-to-head like he did in his multiple knife fights with Leon.
Both of these operatives are capable of operating in a variety of different combat situations. However, only one is bringing the skills needed to beat the other into this fight. In terms of hand-to-hand skills, I'd honestly say this is a bit of a toss-up. And that's mostly due to how few examples of hand-to-hand skills from Hunk we have to go off of. So really, we have to go off of his reputation as the top umbrella close quarters combat specialist. However, with Jack, we see him outright beat Leon in direct combat. The same Leon who can damage BOWs with his melee attacks and later kept up with Chris Redfeild. However, since we never see Leon or Chris go to toe with the Umbrella agents in canon, we don't really have a skill comparison to go off of. However, I will say that based off of statements and showings, Jack should have the very slight advantage, due to high-ranking Umbrella agents being about on par with high-ranking US soldiers in close quarters combat, as shown in the game Operation Raccoon City, which is literally the only example I have to go off of, so please don't bring up the fact that it's not canon, I'm well aware. With Hunk and Leon sticking out as the most skilled member of each group respectively, and as stated earlier, Jack was able to beat Leon in direct combat. Tactics-wise, Jack has the clear advantage in his ability to play both a stealthy and assault-based approach, while Hunk is primarily a stealth agent who avoids confrontation on missions. So while Hunk would have the advantage in a stealth engagement, Krauser would know enough to keep up with Hunk's stealth tactics and would overwhelm him in direct combat. Overall, Jack just has more going for him. While I can't examine Hunk's exact fighting style, Jack should be above him, defeating someone on his general skill level and has a wider variety of tactics mid-combat. And so, I give the third and final edge to Jack Krauser, as well as declare him the winner of this fight. Let's set up this fight. Let's say it takes place in the ruins where Jack confronts Leon just after the knife fight, before Jack has time to prepare, and that HUNK is on his own mission, having been hired by an organization Wesker had betrayed before and is sent to kill Wesker's agents on the island in order to stop his plans. HUNK watches the larger man from a short distance, holding still with his cloak active to get in close and line up a shot, having spent the last half hour slowly getting close enough to ensure he can take down the soldier. Finally lining up the shot, and he then freezes in surprise as Krauser casually turns and stares right at him. If you're here to take me out, I hope whatever you're pointing at me isn't some pea shooter. Immediately, HUNK opens fire with his MP5, but Krauser is able to move out of the way and around a corner. HUNK, keeping his weapon up, follows out, rolling forward to a kneeling position into the open, expecting to see Krauser waiting for him, but instead sees no sign of his target. Just as he gets into a standing position, Krauser drops down, immediately putting HUNK into a chokehold and drawing his knife to slit the former Umbrella agent's throat. However, HUNK is able to use his wrist blade to stab Krauser in the arm, weakening his grip enough for HUNK to drive his elbow into Krauser's sternum, creating enough space for HUNK to spin around and smash the butt of his weapon into Krauser's face before opening fire. Krauser is able to straight up tank a few bullets before once again jumping back and pulling out his TMP to return fire, and HUNK, seeing Krauser go for his gun, gets behind a pillar and reloads his gun. Meanwhile, Krauser slowly approaches, his TMP in one hand and a knife in the other. But neither man is willing to get into the other's line of sight first, creating a small standoff with neither willing to move. That is until Krauser gets impatient and swaps to his TMP for a flashbang grenade, rolling it in front of HUNK and springing into action. However, HUNK, having used flashbangs regularly himself, reacts quickly, covering his eyes and bracing for the loud bang, lessening its effects on him. And when Krauser takes a stab to the man he expected to be blinded, he's cut right across the gut so deeply it would disembowel a normal man. But thanks to the Las Plagas parasite, the blade only goes in an inch or two and he's able to quickly recover. The pair, now engaged in blade combat, trade small cuts and stabs, neither able to get in a good strike until HUNK suddenly rushes in, catching Krauser's knife with his own, and once again stabs his wrist blade right into Krauser's face, but this time the blade just breaks against his skull, giving Krauser the opening to headbutt HUNK, shattering one of the lenses of his mask and stunning him long enough for Jack to deliver a knee strike that sends the soldier into a pillar. Into the pillar he was just hiding behind, hard enough to crack it. As HUNK struggles to his feet, dazed and on the verge of coughing up blood, Krauser draws his bow from his back and aims right for the agent's exposed eye. He lets the arrow go, but HUNK is able to use his MP5 to deflect the arrow and opens fire. Krauser, in response, flipping backwards, avoiding the bullets while aiming another shot. HUNK's way, but this time, HUNK rolls forward, evading Krauser's aim once again. Krauser, knowing he needs to actually land a hit on his attacker, decides to end this and draws an explosive arrow from his quiver and takes aim behind him to stun HUNK long enough to finish him, all the while taking shots from HUNK's submachine gun. However, HUNK actually notices the difference in the arrow types Krauser is using and realizes what the soldier is doing, aiming for the explosive tip, hitting it, and setting it off in Krauser's hands, throwing him back and down onto the ground. Krauser's ears ring as he groans, pushing himself up with his elbows until suddenly HUNK steps down on his chest, pinning him down and drawing his handgun, shooting Krauser 3 times directly in the face. HUNK, assuming his target is down, turns away to start looking for Ada, when suddenly the sound of a tearing shirt catches his attention and he turns to see Jack standing with his chest burned but overall more pissed than hurt. Krauser draws his knife and inches closer. HUNK, seeing that his weapons so far have done little to bring his target down, draws his own knife in response, the two approaching each other cautiously, each now more aware of each other's skill with the knives. HUNK acts first, taking a swipe at his opponent's throat, but Krauser is able to evade and turn HUNK's attack around, quickly putting HUNK on the back foot, pushing him back into a wall. And now having his opponent cornered, Jack makes a feint with his knife slash only to then move in with a punch that shatters the rock wall as HUNK rolls out of the way, activating his cloak. Krauser looks around the area, his blade out and ready to defend himself, when suddenly he feels something slash into the side of his neck, and even with the Plagas, he starts losing a good amount of blood. Krauser then turns to face his assailant, but now he's cut across the knee. It's now that he realizes that HUNK's attacks are meant to disable him, not kill him just yet. And before Krauser can react, he's hit by a hook across the jaw that actually manages to rock him a little before another cut lands. Now knowing where HUNK is, but still having no way of knowing what direction the next attack is coming from, he raises his arm to stab down and finish HUNK once and for all, only for HUNK's own knife to stab into his arm. Quickly tossing his weapon to his free hand, Krauser is able to stab into HUNK's shoulder, with the former Umbrella agent kicking off of Jack, once again disappearing. Krauser, having lost his last weapon, forces his arm to mutate, forming the blade and waits. and steps further into the open to wait. Meanwhile, Hunk is slowly but surely getting closer to make one last attempt to bring Krauser down with a neck snap, and if that fails, escape while he still can. However, just as Hunk is about to lunge forward, Krauser drops down, spinning, and kicks Hunk's own legs out from under him, and he hits the ground, smashing his head into the stone floor as Krauser jumps up to deliver the final blow. And thanks to the fall disorienting him, as well as the wounds sustained over the fight making him more sluggish, Hunk is unable to move in time and is impaled on Krauser's blade and dies only a moment later. And with that, I declare Jack Krauser, the fallen soldier, the winner. I won't lie, this one didn't quite turn out how I was expecting. Sure, I knew going into this that Krauser was probably going to be the winner, but I did think that Hunk would win at least one category. But honestly, even with all that, I still just don't see Hunk going down easy. However, when you break it down, he really doesn't stand a chance of actually bringing down Krauser in a head-to-head fight. Physically, Jack's enhancements with Las Plagas make him stronger, faster, and more durable. His weapons have more firepower and a wider and more variety of usage in them. And his combat skills have him better prepared for a head-to-head engagement and would let him keep up in stealth. Hunk really doesn't have any options to bring Krauser down. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? Do you agree that this fallen soldier could bring down the former Umbrella agent, or do you think that Mr. Death could somehow take down Jack in a way that I didn't think of? Let me know in the comments down below. If I got anything wrong, please feel free to correct me.
Right, please rate, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, as I have plenty more like it. I also have a Twitter and Discord where you can talk to me directly, as well as links to the channels Winter Ghost and 3 Gamer, all in the description. Right, with all that, I'm Ray932, and I'll see you next time.